for you folks. This is Meta Egg, your home for insane fan theory and wild speculation. Right now, what we are going to do is have our little simmer in the please stand by while we check some sound out and so forth. And then we are going to bring on our guest, Frank Zero. No relation to Mike Zero. Frank is an expert in all that is cartoon and esoteric, and we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I'm actually pretty excited. So just give me 1 second, and we shall return. How does that sound to you, my friend Frank?
Oh, it's very crisp, man. I can hear you well.
Okay. And all right, don't say anything for a second. All right. I think we're just going to move it over, bro. We're going to move it over. Everything's looking nice. Everything's looking like it's smooth. I wonder
Cool,
if
man.
there's anybody watching. I have no clue. This is 2 current viewers. If there's anybody watching at home and it doesn't sound just right, there might be a little bit of a hiss. But we are Meta Egg, therefore we are retro. Hear us roar. Let's see here. All right. I can hear both of yas. Folks, tonight we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about 3 cartoons, one of which you've probably had a little bit of. Almost anybody who's going to listen to this knows who G.I. Joe is. Jiminy Christmas. But have you? I want to know in the chat room, has anybody ever heard of Sky Surfer Strike Force? My main man Frank here let me on to him, and it's something else. And then we're also going to be looking at Wild Cats. Now, I know that we mentioned it one time before, Frank, about like people can find your stuff at, let's see, Saturday Morning Vision Quest.
Mm-hmm.
.blogspot.com, where you talk about a lot of what we're going to talk about here. Most of the research came from there, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and there's also some cartoon files on Zero Night, just to mention that.
Sounds vague. Okay, so Zero Night and Saturday Morning Vision Quest. Today we're going to have a Vision Quest that transcends both Saturday morning. No, it's not Saturday and it's not the mornings, folks. But Vision Quest can happen anytime, as far as I'm concerned. So let's see here. G.I. Joe is first, I believe. Let's go. And we have created a little trailer for you guys to watch. Let's see. Frank needs to go below. And then we'll turn that one off. Hold on. Boom. Got it. All right,
Cool.
Frank. How are you doing today?
So, I'm doing well, man. How are you?
So far, so good, man. I'm a little stressed.
This is understandable.
But, I got this to work. Because it's G.I. Joe, it was really hard to pass into the copyright.
Right.
And then, I don't know. I mean, do you have the information on this one? From what
Yeah,
I remember,
absolutely.
this one's called
Invaders.
Invaders, correct. And I think it's like circa 1984. I mean, it's the first season. The weird cool thing about, like, G.I. Joe is the first season has like 100 episodes. I can't exactly remember the exact amount.
Yeah.
People who are listening as this is a podcast will be happy to know that we're going to look it up.
But yeah, Invaders was this very strange episode where the Joes team up with like their Russian equivalent, and they're trying to protect a pipeline, and then an oil pipeline in I forget exactly where it is, and then they have a false flag alien invasion,
Well,
but then
well, first off, I mean, define what false flag means. That's like,
so there's an alien invasion where there's not actually aliens deciding to invade Earth, but rather a human component creating the illusion of aliens or alien craft, or many attributes of what the public thinks of an alien invasion, and then sort of casts that through the media or whatnot. This comes out of the sort of early 90s right wing conspiracy batch of things like Blue Beam and, actually, the final steps of what our controllers wanted to do with the world, according to Werner von Braun, was they wanted to fake an alien invasion. This would be somewhere around an actual asteroid or a an event like this, where then they can, manipulate things into a new world order or into unified countries with one enemy, which is this false alien attack. Reagan spoke of this at the UN. It's a very public idea, and it
yeah,
goes along with Blue Beam because
okay. You're talking about
I'm
two
sorry.
things really quick, so hold on a sec.
Sure.
Okay, so first off, I went and did a little bit of research on the whole like Reagan speech to the UN.
Uh huh.
Okay, okay. So here, let me share my screen real quick. So okay, this Invaders show. This
Yeah.
Invaders show is November 30th, 1985. You see that
Right.
right here?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind. This is weird because that's what happens in this episode, right? In this episode, it's like Cobra. When you said it's a false flag, like somebody pretends that they're aliens. It's not really aliens. It's
Right.
Cobra.
So when the two primary UFOs that are buzzing around the what I believe is the Russian Soviet Guard or something like that
Oh, it's
in the
called like the
GI Joe
October Guard or something.
October Guard, there you
Right,
are.
which is like the
So
Russian version of GI Joe. They're actually pretty cool.
yeah, exactly. It's the Russian equivalent, so to speak, but sort of paramilitary team. You get the whole idea with their own sense of humor. But when the UFOs actually land, an alien walks out and describes that they come from the Sirius, and then
Hold
when
on a sec
someone's
though, because I wanted to say, like here, when we were talking about the Reagan UN speech, and if, for those who don't
yeah,
know, basically what he said is like if there was an alien presence, then the Russian, like the Cold War would end. Basically,
all conflict on Earth would end
right,
because we would see a unique new enemy that's outside of our species.
right, but that's after. So that's 87. So this actual like the the GI Joe that basically encompasses it, right? That idea of like Russia and America like working together. Like Reagan got the speech from GI Joe.
One or the other, but I mean, it was already written in the Bluebeam documentation. If you're to believe the limited amount of documentation we
So like
have on
Werner von
Bluebeam,
Braun is like 60s, like 50s, 60s.
right? But he laid out this plan that would be for the next, century, half a century, something like that. Half a century would be much more accurate. So when the UFO lands, the alien describes being from Sirius and things like that, then takes off the alien mask and appears to be Osama bin Laden, then takes off the Osama bin Laden mask and is just a Cobra. It's already a Cobra reptilian shapeshifter. It's Zartan.
Zartan, right, right.
He's not like the other Cobra beings in that he can't have any access to sunlight and things like that, or it greatly messes him up. And he's got his own little bounty hunter team that works for Cobra.
So the Warner von Braun, aliens will be the last card. That's what it
Uh
is,
huh.
right?
That's according to Carol Rosen, who was his secretary for many years. But there's lots of other information out there that backs up von Braun's timeline. This isn't a thing we take uniquely from him, though he's someone very high in the closets of power. was talking about things like the firmament and alien abduction. So, well, he ran every moon mission. He controls our perception of if we can get to or what is the moon physically. Um, until we're basing it off things that we're believing are actual moon footage, etc.
The coolest thing about the GI Joe is it actually shows space like UFOs, like the classic, almost mundane. Did I freeze? It looks like I froze. The
I don't
the
think so, but
the mundane um flying saucer, right? Land on the White House lawn. So it's almost it's cliche, right? It's going and to some extent, it's just like a kid show and whatever, but it's like a pretty bold move for them to have done, in my opinion.
GI Joe makes many of those. Mind control, psychic driving on psychic children. Excuse me, like torture and mental driving on psychic children. The end of U.S. currency. I mean, these are things that are very startling and
Cobra.
belong to that '90s right-wing anti-New World Order sort of realm of thought. The kind of William Cooper, uh, we don't know exactly what's going on, but we're splashing together things from Richard Hoagland with Faces on the Moon and what the Nazis did and where mind control is at and what that has to do with tricking people into a new world order or whatever. Of course, these cards have been perhaps shuffled because it would be easy to go from pandemic to alien attack, but they wanted to go from alien attack to asteroid attack, I believe, and that was only after terrorism had completely wrung out, all the water out the rag. After we had done everything we possibly could with terrorism, it would then move to this other threat, and that would
The
be
invisible
make sense.
threat of whatever. But see, the thing is, it's really weird. Is like that's totally like feasible now. In fact, like the whole gear of how the government perceives aliens is not necessarily uh, alien, but of as a threat that we don't realize, whether that be like Cobra or whatever, just to make a joke. But it's
Yeah,
kind of like a little chilling because that's possible. We've already seen a lot of the things that GI Joe had, and it come to pass, so to speak. There's certain ideas that ring true before their time, and so like this,
absolutely.
why not? You get what I'm saying? Like even if we're like,
Yeah,
why not? It's totally feasible.
of course.
It's like the
Yeah.
singularity of it being possible.
Yeah, and so many cartoons at the time repeating the false flag alien invasion. So as we go on in this series, or if you guys have read my stuff before or whatever, you're going to see this theme pop up over and over that in a cartoon, there's not just an alien invasion for little kids to, play around with as an idea, but rather a human-based, we're making androids to be the aliens, we're manipulating something else. We're wearing masks in the case of G.I. Joe to be aliens. But imagine how much you can change the perception of everyone on Earth if you just had prominent UFO activity. That landing on the White House lawn. This is
Always
why Johnny
happens.
Quest has an episode, the alien in the White House. We're dealing with a lot of the exact same ideas, and that's more of a walk-in concept than it is any sort of invasion. But it was spread throughout all these shows in different forms. Even Inspector Gadget has a false flag robot alien invasion.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to get my camera back up. It did freeze, but like we're gonna try to. There's where you're talking about the alien unrobes himself, and oh wait, I'm on a different timeline here. Here we
Oh,
go. Come up. Here we go, guys. That's when the aliens say that they're going to invade two different Moscow and San Francisco, but they go for like different, or they go for like the farthest point away from Moscow, right? And then the farthest point away from Washington. And then while all of the forces go to those places to deal with the UFOs, they attack Washington. All right. So now that I got that set up, let's see if I can get this video back started. This is what we were talking about earlier with the. Oh, I can't get my video started, Frank. That makes me upset. Joe Surfer video. That's where it is. Get rid of that one. Come on, Frank. Talk to me here, buddy.
Yeah, well, what? I thought you were just adjusting something. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I am, but. Oof.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about this episode, you know. But we can certainly talk about the theme more. Did you notice anything that stood out in this episode that you want to make a note of?
Not really. I mean, like I said, the biggest thing to me was the fact that the UFO, and then again, like most of the stuff, the series that we're dealing with, were not as prolific as GI Joe was, even in its first GI Joe in its first season was an ungodly amount of episodes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't know, we talked about the Sheik or whatever. I don't know if that's really like I don't know if it's like problematic in this time zone. I don't know if it's really racist, but it lends to the ideas that you were saying of first it being terrorist and then it being like aliens.
yeah, exactly.
So here, let's go. We're just going to go to the next one, which is Sky Surfers.
Sure. I'll just mention that episode of G.I. Joe was written by Dennis O'Neil, who is, of course, a famed Batman writer, and he's worked in all sorts of other comics and cartoons. And
Is the preferred nomenclature. Yeah. Oh, have you ever talked to him, like in your adventures of individuals? Did you just say that you had actually interviewed this guy at all about this?
Denny O'Neil, I think I sent him. I think I asked him, and he was busy or never got back to me or something like that some years ago. But yes, he was one of those prominent names among the cartoon writers and artists and stuff like that I was making a point to try to interview.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Sky Surfer and when Sky Surfer's claim to fame was. Was Sky Surfer Strike Force is a sci-fi superhero animated series that was featured on what is Bobot Entertainment's Amazing Adventure cartoon block and was co-produced by Rudy Spears Production and a She Productions. It sounds like it's a mixture of U.S. and Japan.
Yeah, well, it's got the very heavy anime influence. That's one of the first things I wanted to say, that visually you see something going on that's very different from a lot of cartoons of the era, which is these very, very elaborate anime concepts and animation, but a lot of the action takes directly from anime.
Marks, so to speak.
Yeah, like all of the fighting or the aerial vehicle combat or whatever, it's all hyper anime influenced, but even character designs and the way they look at AI in a dystopian future might remind one of Ghost in the Shell, Kira, or something more popular major anime release at the time.
But also, these had toys as well. Let's check out the toys for a second.
Yeah.
Highlighted by my main girl. I mean, it's really bad names in this show, but her name was
Yes.
Spliced Ice.
Yes.
You can see
And,
Ray.
and she's packing a degree from MIT and does everything the boys do except in heels. These are just some details that I picked up in the last couple of minutes when I was just reviewing both the intro and Secret Galaxies overview of the cartoons. That's somewhere, if you guys are ever interested in the how do you say, like, if you're just interested in the culture of the release date, the action figures, the kind of ideas behind the writers and artists and how the show was done and what impact it had at the time, Secret Galaxy is a YouTube channel where this guy is just, I mean, he's really, really great at breaking down all this stuff, but he doesn't go into any conspiracy realm or any of the things the shows suggest. He much more keeps it surface level and just tells you about, like I was saying, the show's impact and the production and things like that. And he's got a huge room of action figures he does this from, so he's legit. Will? Will you cut out the sound, buddy?
Check, 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 checkity check. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mister Frank Zero? Frank Zero. Frank Zero. Yeah, you're back. Turn your volume up a bit. Now we can hear you, but Frank cannot. So hold on. Let me see if I can get my camera back up and running. Video capture. Okay. Make that one. Boom. Make it big. Start over. All right. I am back, peoples. Now we got to get Frank back. Everybody can hear what we're talking about, and we're going to watch a little bit of cartoons while yeah, I got you,
I don't think
Stan.
your volume's on, man, or mine's not.
Oh, I can hear you now. They say that they can hear me, but you can't hear me. So I'm going to go boom and then call him back. And then that's how we live, people. This is how we do things. I hope you can hear me, my friend. I hope you out there. This is how live streams go. Mr. Frank Zero. How we doing, buddy? Can you hear me? I can't even see you now. Both back, it says. Anyways, I'm going to name some of these different characters while we try to figure out. There he is. Hi, Frank. Can you hear me? Shake your head yes if you can hear me, Frank. 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 Franksters. Mr. Frankie. Mr. Frank.
You, there you are.
Yeah, now we're playing with the full deck. And I think
Okay.
all right, that's cool. Let's see here. We were talking about Strike Force.
Yeah.
Um, Frank can't hear you, but now he can. So let's see here. Thank you. You know what, Dale? Thank you, all of you guys Omi one to homie, I'm glad you're here. The Beskar Batman. Let me hear that if you guys have ever heard of Strike Force, like the show we're talking about, like 1995 through 96, there was only a few episodes. There was a toy brand, but if you've heard of Sky Surfer Strike Force, let me hear you. It had crazy names like Sky Surfer 1, Crazy Stunts, Slice Ice, who is my homegirl. Her birthday is December 24th, 1978. She's in my wheelhouse, bro. Aaron for Aaron Forcer, and then the worst one is Sore Loser. Sore Loser. Sore as in sore. That right there that you can see is Crazy Stunts, the guy who looks like, I don't know, like uh, Paul Revere. he looks like
Yeah,
there's Slice Ice. That's my girl right there. Don't
it
mess with
looks like they were trying to get dressed at Galaxy Riders. You know what show I'm talking about?
I
With
can look it
a
up real quick. Galaxy Rider. It looks
like
like a
it's
cosplay
another one of
show.
these strange combinations of like cowboy fashion and anime from the same period. And it starts with a girl drawing a pentagram. She's like this Jean Grey chick, and she draws pentagram and like fire and dances over it with her lasers or whatever. And Galaxy Riders otherwise just has yeah, laser wielding anime cowboys, but it looks like the same fashion as Sky Surfer Strike Force, which is just this malinformed mix combination of cowboy fashion and anime.
Well, it is. It's uncomfortable, but and it's a little complicated. But they basically like. I'm not really sure what happens. Like they have like a little bitty small disc that's a UFO, and he almost puts it in like a CD player, and these
They say
demons
the
come out.
aliens send their prisoners, or
Oh yes, that's right.
they banish their prisoners onto he doesn't say UFO, he says magnetic disc, which then allows this kind of 6 day process to go on, where they take that tape inside the UFO and produce these two aliens.
Cool. We're about to go on to Wildcats. Just want to see how long we've been streaming for right now, just to check out. Well, it's only been 30 minutes, man. We're already like, most of that time has been us having problems. Silly bastards. Um, there's a couple of things that I wanted to say about this that I can't remember exactly right off the top of my head. I mean, it's totally incoherent, like how the Sky Surfers have a relationship to the military. Like, who allows these guys to drift around on these like these sleds, fighting crime or fighting
Just
like
why? Why is that the format to have like boat sleds? There's these random flying like skateboards. How does this add to whatever their mission is? Why is that even there?
it doesn't make any sense. And the costumes are almost like guar or something, in my opinion, especially
Yeah,
the bad guys. It's like really over the top, like 90s. And it sounds like, you remember how, like, in the 90s, like, they had, like, Tarzan? Like, Disney had Tarzan that was supposed to, like appeal to kids wanting to be into
yeah,
like extreme sports or something. I feel like
sure.
that's what's going on with like the sleds and stuff. Oh, but right here though, there's also the point of to make about the Men in Black reference. This guy right here is a shapeshifter. My girl Spliced Ice tries to get up in that info.
Uh-huh.
she by perpetrating us that she wanted to split sides, but this guy is like a shape shifting Men in Black character, who's packing. You get what I'm saying?
Sure, sure.
He's trying to hold down those females with whatever villains use for grinder.
Right. Oh boy.
He's packing heavy. He's a shapeshifter, man. He can be whatever
Yeah.
she wants him to be.
And he just works for the villains, or I can't even remember that guy.
Hey, I mean, let's see. Yeah, it's an animated style. It's Thundercats, I guess. I mean, yeah, Silverhawk, Thundercats are probably in that same thread of like the Japanimation like influenced over America. I mean, of course, it
Yeah.
started with like Speed Racer and whatnot, and of course, I don't know, like the it's weird. Like it's almost like a suicide. Like the villain is a grenade that blows up, and one is these all-seeing eyes that like hypnotize people into seeing things that aren't there. There's just
Yeah.
like real loaded like innuendos of what they're trying to get at. Like this the toys though, like selling a suicider to a suicide bomber to a kid. I don't know.
Well, he's a grenade man. It's like, I mean, when you're a kid, you're not interpreting things like that. So he's a giant grenade man.
Have you ever seen or have you ever read like the Civil War in Marvel? Like that's one of
The Civil War, absolutely, yeah.
in Nitro, I believe, is like the mutant who can like discharge and blow up at will. It's like a
Well, he was the false flag
oh
reason
they
for
did
the
that
introduction for the mutant
hoist.
ID.
Yeah,
So like at the beginning of Civil War, he's the one they kind of trick into being thrown into a bus or something, and he winds up creating like a nuclear explosion. Then the registration of mutants begins. Then people like Punisher and Captain America decide to go ultimately, literally underground, and people like Iron Fist are left to fight it out in the streets, with his family and kids and everything. And people like Tony Stark and Spider-Man all choose their sides based off of if they're reliant on technology, if they're reliant on or so friendly with the government that they want to be registered, or if there's someone like the Punisher who would really rather not have somebody following him, keeping track of every crime, so to speak. If you're doing crime on villains, you still call it crime, right? So
yeah. There's that
you're
classic scene where I think the Punisher, like, there's a bunch of villains who team up on Spider-Man,
yeah,
and the Punisher saves him at the very last second in the sewers, slings him over his shoulder, and carries him to like where Captain's secret lair
Captain
is.
America hangout. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then a bunch of villains come in, and villains are like, "Ah, we're gonna join the team. We're gonna join the team." And like Punisher just shoots him right in the head,
Yeah,
and Captain starts beating the shiz out of him. And
yeah.
Punisher
But I
walks
mean,
out
there's other
and
things
gets his
happening.
medal.
Like the villains are being made into essentially street cops, and they'll be released from their negative zone prison where they can't hurt anybody. And they're just walking the streets as if they're heroes. And so I think that kind of politics is going on in Captain America and Punisher's head. Besides well, for once we can't side with the government. The government's deciding to, crack down on us or whatever. We do pretty well. Um, essentially just using the spark of fear from the character you were just mentioning. I'm sorry, the guy who blew up.
I have no idea what his name is. I can look it up real quick. Let's
He,
see. The
I
villain
thought you
in
said his
Replicon,
name at
blue
the.
skin. Replicon is the Men in Black looking guy, and then
Oh, no, no, no.
PCK
I meant
Grenarder
in
is
Civil War, buddy.
oh
Sorry.
Nitro. Wasn't it Nitro?
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
This guy right here, Grenadier, is basically a giant walking grenade. He blows up when his pen is pulled and resembles or reassembles moments later. He's usually his usual function is demolition. Doctor Five Eyes. That's the guy who has he hypnotizes. That's the guy with like eyeballs all over his.
Yeah,
Like, was
but
that a
what
toy? What a
five?
fucking horrible toy.
You know what the Five Eyes is, right?
No, no, no.
Like the global
Oh,
name for the five
octopus.
countries with the surveillance, with the
Oh,
predominating surveillance capabilities. Australia, us, England, etc.
the Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprised Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Holy crap, bro! That is cool. That is cool. Hold on a second. Let me set this up so we can show everybody, because that's kind of cool. Alright, and copy references. Move that down there below Frank. And put it over. There we go. Boom. Five Eyes. So Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprised of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These countries are parties to multilateral UK-USA agreement, a treaty for joint cooperation and signals when was the beginning of 1941. So this is basically the end of the war. This is the alliance for the end of the war. Wow,
I
that's
mean, it's there's a different relationship with the UN and things like that, but it always seemed to me like the people with an NSA
do you think that's
made.
intentional, dude? Come
Wait,
on.
what?
Do you think that's
Oh yeah,
intentional? Like the
they
NATO
wouldn't
thing?
call them Five Eyes for. I
Yeah,
mean,
Five Eyes.
I think it's referring to that. We're not going far with this AI brain fuse main villain.
Whoa. But even like, okay, so City of Terror, Death Paint, Voodoo Master, Alien Attack is the one I pick, and that's the episode that we were showing.
Yeah,
Titan of Terror, Cyber Magic. So there's one about magic that we should probably look into that. We should probably do an episode with all the weird magic stuff, like in like Star Trek and whatnot. The Ancient
yeah,
City, Time Storm, Killer Ants, The Dogs of Doom. That is so like Diamond Dog, like David Bowie. The Dogs of Doom, like Sirius again, like in the G.I. Joe one, you know? Mountain
yeah,
of Fear, which would be in the Mountain of Madness, which would be like an H.P. Lovecraft. So
yep,
Terror Tunes, Life Force, The Black Box, The Terror in the Jungle, The Crawling Horror, Crime City, Attack of the Slither Monsters, which sounds again very, very Lovecraftian. Sword of Power, Danger in Space, The Water Beast, Prince of Freedom, 2 Minute Warning, Island of Fear, and again, Diamonds of Death, like the Diamond Dog Sirius. Like that's all that it's missing is for them to say that those aliens are from Sirius, bro. That's the
yeah.
only thing that
And
is
you know
missing.
what Diamond Dogs is, right?
What do you mean? Diamond is
Like Metal Gear Solid.
oh, what is this? What is this? Tell me more.
Uh, well, look it up so I don't mess it up too much. But Diamond Dogs is one of the, um, let's COEs, one of the companies that's it's a private military company with its own surveillance and other applications that I believe Snake is working for in the fifth one. Nope, no, no, we're not that far. The third one, I think.
Diamond Dogs Metal Gear was a private military company led by Venom Snake around the 1980s. It was created as a result of the devastation of the military's sand frontier as well as the attack on Old Mother Base. Diamond Dogs managed to salute themselves on an offshore plant modeled after the former base, giving them it's all of that fucking base in Antarctic BS, right? Over and over and
Well,
over.
in Metal Gear, you get to sort of be begin to build your own Blackwater on this oil rig. So you're taking back plants to make
George
medicine.
Bush.
You're taking back animals to do biology. You're taking back soldiers to make your army. You're assigning each of these soldiers as a cook or a guard or a sniper, and you're delegating where they're going to work within Diamond Dogs. So it's a very clear Blackwater sort of reference. You get the idea that Hideo Kojima has gotten very into the culture of private armies, and that game sort of teaches you about building and occupying and further going out and attacking and building further.
Hmm.
You get
So
to see it from a non-country standpoint. You're simply, one very good intelligence agent, spy type of person getting to delegate the jobs of all these other people. And like I said, do science and research, find plants, find animals all over the environment, send them back to your science and research place, and they develop into more and more things. Triazepam is a medicine that you make out of plants that you gather from the Middle East, which is where the country. Well, actually, you're fighting a few places within the game, but I'm sorry. Will, what was the last thing you said?
oh, nothing. We were
Oh,
just talking about Metal Gear Solid and We were talking
Diamond Dog.
about diamond dogs for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But you were talking about like vegetation and the things that you can find, but I don't know how you got there.
Oh, I was just talking about how intricate the game is.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
that's
was
right.
saying you're finding soldiers, you make them into your soldiers, you find plants, you make them into medicine. I mean, you send them to your science and research place, and they take a little while to develop them into medicine. You can capture animals, and they're treated fairly, and you even make a little zoo inside your science department for the animals to live and still be able to be used by researchers and the scientists that work for you, things like that.
All right, so I'm gonna go on to Wildcats, even though I would like to just like chill for a second until we see sliced ice again.
No, Wildcats is good, man.
All right, we'll go to Wildcats then. This is Wildcats. Now, this episode is called Dark Blade Falling, which is their first episode. I'll go ahead and look them up a little bit while you tell everybody at home a little bit more about Wildcats. That if they don't know, you get what I'm saying.
Right, right. So, of course, probably most of you know that the Wildcats was Jim Lee's foray into going to Image, and the rap that it always gets is sort of trying his own X-Men. But the Wildcats has over the years certainly proven to have a lot of very deep writing and interesting ideas thrown into it, from the comics that came out 2 or 3 years ago all the way back to the original ones that inspired this animated series. And it's really because of the reptilian, demonic, shape-shifting, third eye chip implants and men in black, shape-shifting men in black, excuse me, who work for the Daemonites, or this kind of Jack Kirby idea of putting together the the demons or the underworld beings, and and maybe some other factors in the Eternals was called the Deviants. And I
Right.
see Wildcats as kind of taking a step from that and making it the Daemonites, who are this combination of the same being, sort of, but kind of confirming that they are immediately extraterrestrial. And in Wildcats, they can possess people's bodies. And the Eternals, they're simply villains who, the other UFO nauts fight off, or the other ancient aliens have to fight.
Well, they're definitely like reptilian in nature too. But it's funny.
Absolutely.
Do you know about the Shaver Mysteries? Are you familiar with the Shaver?
Absolutely.
So I feel like it's sort of like an archetypical. Well, I'll give a bigger breakdown on the Shaver Mysteries in a second because I think it's important if people
Sure.
don't know. But I mean, like,
Absolutely.
what were the Deros? The Dero, like the name of the
Darrow.
the
Yeah.
Darrow.
Dero. Yeah.
Was
The beings beneath Mount Shasta and many other underground caverns throughout the world who have machinery that can kind of change the function, the spiritual
right.
energy around places and the tectonic plates and things like that.
It's the same
They have
thing.
these.
It's the same idea or headspace because everything that we know about cartoons and everything that we know about comics basically came from like the pulp magazines of Amazing
Sure.
Story and stuff
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
sci-fi, the beginning of sci-fi, and the Shaver Mysteries, written basically by a paranoid schizophrenic, like had the same effect on readers as say like Whitley Strieber's Communion did. Like there's something
Sure.
that generates this truth of weird. Your volume went down again, Will.
Well, it doesn't sort of exist in a vacuum. What were we just saying? Well, I'm sorry, I lost.
No, no, no. We were talking about Shaver Mysteries and how like the same topics kind of like go over and over and over
Right,
again.
because the Shaver Mysteries, besides revolving around a pulp sci-fi writer who may have claimed to actually been down there or whatever, is well enfolded into the Mount Shasta lore and mythology that existed before it, and a lot of the pulp material that existed around it. But then when you look at, Nazi occultism and all these other things, as far as accessing super beings that have power over the surface world or other men's minds, This is a very common trope, you know. And then as to them existing in underground bases in places that we think are essentially blocked off from human access or whatever, unless you have this
The Nazi
one,
Arctic base again.
yeah, so you could either go Admiral Byrd with the Antarctica and the ice wall and the Agartha that he flew into, or you go with the Shaver, paranoid schizophrenic or whatever.
All over.
But across the line, you're dealing with the same ideas, the same mythology, and in a lot of cases, like someone like Admiral Byrd had no reason to make up any sort of tall tales. He was an accomplished adventurer and,
Right, and if it's
Navy
not for
explorer.
like H.P. Lovecraft's Mountains of Madness is basically lifted
Right,
right off of the Bird expeditions. So whether it's
right,
fiction or not, it has the same effect. Like it doesn't matter if it's tall tale. There's something to the fact that it was influential enough to like melt its way down into pop culture all the way to now, like present day. It's
right.
like it's become almost a trope. It's really weird because I have this real habit of teaching GPTs how to do like synchromysticism or like find meta eggs, so to speak.
Yeah,
And it mentioned, like, I mentioned MIBs, which of course the pop culture MIB of Dark City or The Matrix is totally represented in Wildcats to a T. And we already
yeah,
saw
sure.
that a little bit in the Sky Surfer, whatever.
We're getting a look at Agent Smith with those first agents in the first episode.
Right, right. And that's pre Agent Smith because Matrix is 99, right? So all of this happens
Yeah,
before then. But it's interesting because like even the chatbot started calling the MIBs an archetype. Like it labeled it as an archetype because so I mean it's like already like of course GPT is like scraping what's off of the internet or whatever. So it's already talked about like that way. But like if
right.
you think about the MIBs as almost like um, an obvious plot point, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that trope is transcendent throughout. I mean, you can start with just people going the wrong way in underground caverns, or you could start with just people seriously looking into ufology and the abduction phenomenon, things like that. Or you could look at it as you want to find the occult roots of extraterrestrial contact or occult methods of communicating with extra dimensional extraterrestrial beings or whatever, you're always running into the men in black. They seem to be couriers or the police of time space. And when that's interrupted by another being, you run into them. And
The
when it's interrupted
arbiters,
by
the
what's
gatekeepers to the land of the dead, because
it's
like you
very strange because if you go to other there's tales of people just going to other worlds or other dimensions, whether following some complicated occult codex or just wandering the wrong way in a forest or, like I said, underground cavern. And something about that, I don't know. I think that the Men in Black idea is basically transcendent of all the media we see them in. Because when you really get into, there was the man who knew too much about flying saucers and all these books where the authors were getting sort of bullied and harassed by the Men in Black. But then there's these people just looking for transcendent transdimensional experiences, and when they walk into a new place or they see a new field of view with a beautiful crystalline city or from underground the earth or whatever, the Men in Black are accompanying them without really saying much, just sort of, I guess, policing their travels there. So it's weird. It's also very strange because we've known for decades now that the Men in Black show signs of being robotic, of powering down, of not understanding human culture and
dead,
human
like as if
language
they're like
and coherent.
regenerated dead people. How's my volume
They,
to
they
you? Can you hear me?
yeah, you're very loud.
Okay.
It seems, as far as I can tell, um, yeah, it seems like in every one of these oh, I'm sorry. When you look at them visually, when you're next to them, when you're trying to figure out, how they put their skin on that day or whatever, they don't seem like humans. Yet to this day, the UFO documentaries and the series you'll see on History Channel and all these UFO shows will keep nailing in the idea these shady government agencies from a shady government agency. They're these unknown agents of our government. They're not. They're something completely different. Now, if we're
Something
saying
out
our
of
government is,
fairy lore almost.
what's that?
Something out of
Oh,
fairy
yeah.
lore. Like
Well,
it
it's very close to fairy lore, vampire lore, and the black-eyed children. I mean, they all
right. That's
have
how they're
their
represented
own.
in the Matrix. Like all of the glitches that like fight against program anomalies are basically what you would call like Fortean transient police officers. Like
Yeah.
paranormal ideas, they're ghosts or werewolves or vampires or something like that.
Yeah, but they're definitely not coming to get like strict documentation on a UFO case. And they're definitely not coming to, in a coherent way, just scare you and tell you stop researching UFOs. But they have a very interesting, curious way of like they may come in super intimidating and inhuman, and you feel oppressed in your own home, and you feel like you shouldn't have let them in, and they're trying to intimidate you. But then one of the two just starts passing out or starts explaining they're running out of power, they're running out of energy, and when given food or drink to eat, they'll take an entire salt shaker and drink it like a Gatorade. They don't know how to use human tools and items, or not familiar with our world at all. And then you can say that this is part of fantasy or part of the minds of those who have such open minds that they look into UFOs or whatever, but it seems like every time the men in black leave, someone runs to a window or runs straight outside, and the entire car, which looks completely flawless. Somebody can live out in a mud road. You got to drive 50 miles in the mud to get to, and their car will just appear there. Even their shoes won't have evidence of having walked from the car to the house with any mud on it. There's
Well,
all these very,
their dress or their car or whatever usually is like out of date too. So it's sort of like
yeah,
the idea of it, the Matrix scene where they have like a library full of what they get to choose before they actually enter the Matrix is it's really weird because that's how I almost when you read stories of MIBs, that's like the impression you get is like somehow they're just going in for a mission, you know what I mean, but they're
yeah.
not really within that time or space, so to speak.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned time because if you were a time traveler and you had to blend in from 1928 to yesterday at a funeral, you would just wear a black suit. And if you had any kind of weird relationship to our time space that wasn't comfortable for you, those sunglasses and that hat. And so it's interesting that even though they're out of date and their car is out of date or whatever, it seems like they're still wearing a uniform that for the longest period in human history is relevant. Just this black suit. They don't look out of place in the 80s
They
or
could be anywhere. You could be JFK. You could be like there's a kid who walks down the street near me in a fucking in a weird black suit, you know, every day, and the suit's like mouse shaped, right? And he's a
yeah,
young kid, but it doesn't fit him, and it's like well, you could be from any time period. Like I don't know what the kid, and he has something like he carries something like very distinct, like a cane or something with him, and I have no idea where this guy's going. But you can almost set hit your watch, and it's like that idea is used a lot, whether it be in fiction as far as like Stephen King's 11/22/63, where like there's just black suited guys who go to each timeline and like protect the weak points, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
Or like, but this is another idea though. Like they're almost always associated to mind control in some way, like the
yeah.
traditional like flashing light, trying to influence another person's mind. Even here in Wildcats, they're like crawling into the third eye or
Right.
whatnot, and that hints at some sort of like maybe that's where MK Ultra came from, because a lot of the different uh, original UFO sightings are connected to individuals who were this is really weird shit, associated to MK Ultra in the trial, Jim Garrison's trial and the JFK trials. Like one of the
Yeah.
first person that he called for the assassination of JFK was this operative who was also associated in the first UFO sightings up in
Uh,
Tacoma, Washington.
Guy Bannister created
Right.
X-Files and the FBI, and he and also Ronald Dowell. They were on a boat and it was attacked by UFO debris, and a kid was injured and his dog was killed. And then this UFO case somehow gets Guy Bannister. He's in the realms of power in the FBI because he's given the X-Files. He's given the unknown files, which he then dubs the X-Files, and then he winds up a significant part of the JFK trial. And uh, the people all around that time had very interesting associations too, like you're saying,
Fred
both
Chrisman. Fred Chrisman was a guy who was associated with the CIA as well as like mind control as well as UFOs. But there's a direct lineage.
as
Uh,
well as gun running to he's in
yes, in the Promise software
uh
as well.
yeah. Yeah, but he's in the latest Scorsese flick that people didn't like too much. Like the last mafia movie he was making. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But he was passing um Robert De
Figure.
Niro guns. What?
He was in that movie. Like the character was in that movie. That's wild.
Yeah, I'm trying to get all these freaks sorted in my mind, but the one
Here, we'll look him
uh
up in a second. Let's go back to the Shaver mysteries for a second.
sure.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna. No, no, no. Just deal with me for 2 seconds, internet, and then we're going to reshape this internet a little bit so we can really read it and make out what we're talking about here. Make this bigger. Yeah, there we go. Shaver. All right, and then we're gonna go like this. All right. Oh, oh, oh. Let's come down a little bit. We'll go like this. All right. All right. Static. Okay. Now, Richard Shaver was an American writer and artist who achieved notoriety in the years following World War II. Uh, as the author of controversial stories that were printed in science fiction magazines, primarily Amazing Stories. In Shaver's stories, he claimed that he had personal experience of a sinister ancient civilization that harbored fantastic technology in caverns under the earth. The controversy stemmed from the claim by Shaver and his editor and publisher Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer is such an important role as far as like that's the Atom, and the DC universe is named after Ray Palmer. The Shaver's writings were presented in the guise of fiction were fundamentally true. Uh, the Shaver's stories were promoted by Ray Palmer as the Shaver's Mysteries. During the last decade of his life, Shaver devoted to himself to rock books, stones that he believed had been created by an advanced ancient race and are advanced ancient races and embedded with the legible pictures and text. He produced paintings allegedly based off the rocks, images, and photographed the rocks books extensively, as well as writing about them. Posthumously, Shaver has gained a reputation as an artist, and his paintings have been exhibited. But I mean, I feel like they're just making fun of him. The impact was huge, though, like we were talking about with the D-Rose and whatnot. It's almost like a trope that is used consistently over and over of these sort of like race within the earth that's controlling with mind control everybody above.
Well, they have a technology that is infused with crystalline structures that people say they see in all kind of underground, sites around the world. And these crystalline structures were able to um, change or sort of They basically produced like frequencies that could go from affecting tectonic plates to affecting consciousness in the way 5G would today, or whatever, if you just want to use a rough comparison. So a sort of blanket technology like in Dark City, a sort of engine to change the entire city and the feelings and the consciousness of those beings, let's say, trapped in the city, those beings, the humans trapped in the city.
Let's see here. All right, there's like we said, we've gone through quite a bit of stuff. Unless there's something you want to go back to, I mean, there are very few things that we haven't covered. It's almost here.
Yeah.
Here, this is what I was saying, Kenneth. Okay, so the Shaver and UFOs. Here, this is a good place to talk about right here. Okay, Shaver and UFOs. In the summer of 1947, Kenneth Arnold claimed to be or to have seen some unusual flying objects near Mount Rainier. His report called widespread interest in the unidentified flying objects, and Palmer was quick to argue that the flying saucers were validation of the Shaver mysteries. So he used it for justification of proving why, because it was right before all of this shit got seen, right? So for several, he noted.
Well, that's where flying saucers comes from.
Right.
That sighting,
Kenneth
and he didn't
Arnold.
say it himself. The journalist messed it up. He said they were floating like saucers, but they were actually another shape.
Well, like
And
he
they were
said
like
something
boomer,
like they were skipping across the ground like stones or something.
like saucers,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
was like it was a boomerang shaped craft, a few of them in formation.
Okay.
Kenneth Arnold. Just so everyone knows, it's Kenneth Arnold I'm talking about there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
he
yeah.
popularized the term flying saucer sort of accidentally, and then the following waves in the 50s and other decades sort of speak for themselves.
The idea that Shaver and Palmer had somehow predicted or presaged the flying saucer craze was later championed by writer John Keel, and that's the guy who wrote Mothman Prophecies. And a huge influence on most, like the MIBs are like straight off of Keel's Mothman Prophet, like the whole Will Smith shit, that's straight out of John Keel. In the 1983 article, The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers, which was first showcased in 40 and Times, he declared that Palmer assigned artists to make sketches of objects described by readers in disc-shaped flying machines appeared on the cover of his magazine long before June 1947. Of course, that's everything that we've seen. Like everything with flying saucers, right? Like G.I. Joe was influenced by that. Like Sky Surfers was influenced by that. Like all of that is that same initial span. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
boom, right there. That's what we're talking about. And so, but there's another one which is called, what was it called? Um, Maury Island. That's what it's called. Maury
That's
Island.
right. That's the Guy Bannister X-Files connection there, besides the JFK connection. I think we should do like a whole episode on UFOs and the JFK phenomenon, because I can't get my name straight. Like Guy Ferry is the guy with the bizarre red hair who may
Right.
have been
Guy
a pedophile who helped
Tommy Lee Jones.
anti-Castro rebels here in New Orleans and was running guns to the mob, which can be seen in Scorsese's last film.
So, the Maury Island incident refers to the claims by Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl. That's who you said you were saying, Raw Dahl or Harold Dahl, of flying debris and threats by men in black following sightings of unidentified flying objects. So Fred Chrisman, this guy is nuts. He not only has things that are in American or Amazing Stories, but he also was like, like Jesus Christ, man. Like, what isn't he involved with? It's so weird. Even the TV show The Invaders is supposed to be based off of his life, but he is,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
that's what
I
he
thought it had
claims.
something to do with a malinterpretation of Betty and Barney Hill, but that could also be in there.
Right. Well, I almost feel like Chrisman was some sort of like propagandist for the CIA. Like he would, because we know that the Shaver mysteries aren't true, but they were popular, so he latched onto them. Then right after that are the sightings, which Chrisman is part of the Tacoma, Washington, like Maury Islands, which happened on top of the Kenneth Arnold thing. Like
Right.
it's like on June 4th, private pilot Kenneth Arnold again claimed he saw a string of 9 shiny unidentified flying objects past Mount Rainier. And then later on, Chrisman says that on like the same like the days before it. So he went Kenneth Arnold went and interviewed Fred Chrisman because on June 21st, which happened before the Kenneth Arnold one, they said that they were at the Maury Island and the captain saw a UFO like drop sledge and it killed a
Yeah,
dog and broke a little kid's arm. But that's like,
exactly.
right. Well, it's really weird. It's all connected, man. It's all connected.
I mean, it is in simple and very bizarre ways between these cast of characters, you know.
Right.
And it's
But it
interesting
influenced
that
pop culture regardless. Regardless.
X-Files, the X-Files, we got the X-Files from that dude.
Yeah. All
Look
right.
up Guy Bannister X-Files just to make
Yes.
sure I'm not full of it.
Well,
I'm
there's
sorry.
Guy Bannister and there's Guy Barker too.
Gray Barker, Guy
Barker,
Bannister.
Gray Barker, and Guy Bannister. You're right.
Gray Barker was they knew too much about flying saucers and related to the occult connections, or the attempt at finding an occult means as a language or of a form of communication with transdimensional or extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah, the FBI real life X Files document strange connections. According to Jim Garrison, the guy, well, the Kevin Costner character in JFK's files on Christmas, Chrisman, the guy that we were just talking about involved with Maury Island, both he and Bannister were connected to Sergio Arcia Smith, a leader of a CIA backed anti Castro group that Bannister apparently helped supply with arms, which would be basically the Bay of Pigs. The twist of high weirdness surrounding the JFK assassination are so high and so weird that H.P. Abralia, too dedicated a book to it. Anyways, Guy
But wait,
Bannister
there's
files
Guy
went to various.
Bannister finding these or being given these unknown, we have no idea what to do with files in the FBI, and he called them the X Files. I thought it was a very clear cut thing. I'm sorry.
I don't see it yet. I don't see anything about a Gray Barker. Let's try Gray. Are you sure it wasn't Gray?
Now, Gray Barker was an author who wrote these interesting Men in Black related books, and then Guy Bannister was the one who got the X Files, which is even mentioned in Lavenda's Secret Space Talk. I'm pretty sure I got the right guy, but there are lots of guys floating around there with similar bizarre names.
All right, before our batteries cut out and all of this, I want to
Yes.
say hi to Trinity and hi to Mike. Mike, the immortal. He is in our chat room right now, and he is a flying saucer.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's curious.
what do you think we should do next? Like, we've got a couple of different ways that we could go with this. Like, we could do the whole idea that we've been kicking around a Spider Woman, or we could do
Yeah.
witchcraft, or
I think we should continue with, while it's kind of been entered into, maybe the alien invasion thing, because there's a few more really poignant episodes throughout different series. But also, Spider Woman has so much relevant to everything. I mean, there's so much ufology just in that one season of Spider Woman. So I think we could do both, really. I think we could continue Alien Invasion and begin Spider Woman Alien episodes in that gesture. Perhaps whatever you want to do. It doesn't
No, that sounds good. I mean, sticking with the alien stuff seems pertinent. Like uh, there's just ideas that we have out there, I guess is the best way to say it. Like you could do Men in Black. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you could do whatever the
sure,
fuck you want, really. But
sure.
I'm I'm definitely like pretty enthusiastic about like we didn't get pulled for copyright. So the system is working. We have like miniature previews of these cartoons. There's still some hiccups, but it's live streams. But a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, I can run through AI and clean up the sound if it hisses or whatever, and we can make into little. Dude, there's my girl. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Well, let's talk about sliced ice. um, but like, there's just a lot of jumping off points. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
just UFOs, man. Like, it's a thing. What are they called? UAPs now. And after I saw
Whatever.
like the Jordan Peele the other day, it's like all of those themes and stuff are being represented to pop culture as like a, I mean, of course, the ideas have been there forever since Kirby and before, but still, like,
There's been waves of pop culture. Independence Day and Men in Black were setting scenarios long before they'd be relevant to our
boom.
physical reality, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, all
You
right.
still freaking out over sliced ice or
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah. It's a good scene. I wish I could like I've got to set it up to where I could like rewind and fast forward certain things. And I also I'm curious, like I'm curious more about more information about like Sky Surfer. There's only 2 seasons, so we could do that whole thing or mix up different parts of those seasons with different stuff that we do. Like let's just talk. Well, I'll text you tomorrow.
Cool. That sounds good to me, man.
All right, for everybody who's out there, thank you so much for joining in.
Yes, thank you guys. We appreciate y'all just tuning in and checking it out.
All right, cool. And we shall see you guys again later. Stay
All
meta,
righty.
my friends.
Yes. Goodbye, everyone.